Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here for our Wednesday morning press conference after each council meeting. Before we go into the events of the council meeting last night, I got a couple things I want to talk to you all about. I want to give everybody a reminder that Market Street Festival is this weekend. Starts Friday night at 6 down at the soccer complex, where they're going to have music and food trucks and a lot of fun activities going on. Also, then Saturday morning, it kicks off again at 9 a.m. in historic downtown Columbus. We'll have a lot of vendors and food and fun things going on. This is the 26th anniversary. I want to say a special thank you to Barbara Bigelow and Amber Brislin for their hard work on this. It makes a real difference for the city. Also, we have a lot of our city employees who are working to spruce everything up for the city. So y'all come out and enjoy it, and bring your friends and family. You might note that I've got Mayor Possum here at the podium with me again. We're also, during Market Street, the Pick It Up Possum Town Committee will have a booth near the Rosenswag Center. They've got a Color It Up contest that will be taking place from 9 a.m. to 2:30. Kids from 3 to 11, children 3 to 11 years old, can stop by and draw a picture of themselves with Mayor Possum picking it up, showing how they're not going to be a litter critter. And then there'll be a contest. The contest goes till 2:30, and then at 3 they will be announcing awards for groups 3 to 5 to 6 to 8 and 9 to 11. So we encourage folks to come out and participate in the contest. Mayor Possum and I will also make an appearance at the booth after lunch. We'll be happy to pose for pictures and talk to the kids. But I also just want to say a big thank you to the people that are on the committee for Pick It Up Possum Town. This is they are meeting weekly and reaching out to others to work on this very important project of keeping our city clean. And I really appreciate their efforts for this, having a booth at Market Street this year. So with that, we will move into discussions from the meeting, and I'll start with Jeff and let him come up. We had a few items in executive session, and I'll let him come up to speak to those.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. We had 2 items of personnel in executive session. The first one related to job performance of an employee in the Public Works Department. This individual was selected for a random urine test for drugs and submitted 2 samples that did not register the right temperature. So on the 3rd test, he gave us a true sample and was positive for marijuana cocaine. He was terminated. The second matter related to a matter of personnel in the administration department, and the council and the mayor approved retention of Linda Holloman for 2 more months. She's been volunteering as a fill-in for the CFO until we hired Mr. Brigham, and she's still been doing exemplary work for the city according to everything the mayor has said that I know of, and others here at City Hall. So they voted unanimously to allow her to remain on 2 months and to be bonded for that period and reevaluate at the end of 2 months how much longer, if any, they want to keep her on. That was it.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions about that? There were several items that we discussed during the council meeting. Do y'all have any specific questions about any of the events that we discussed?
Can you explain the tax abatement discussion that came up last night? You know, what that law says and what you guys are allowed to do and how you apply for it, or how you qualify for it and that kind of thing, to Jim Malden?
Yes, and I'm going to bring Jeff back up to speak to that too. Jim Malden made an application for ad valorem tax exemption for the work that he did on 5th Street South, which is the old Fred's building. It was my understanding from the discussion last night that the city has been awarding these for quite some time. And to our knowledge, no one had ever been turned down. Is that correct?
Yes.
But there were some concerns about whether that is beneficial to the city to always say yes to these projects. So in some cases, people have come in advance to get, what is the term? For a content resolution when they're planning to work on the projects. In other words, if you're buying one of these buildings or considering buying a building, you can come to before the council to get a content resolution for the work. But I'm going to let Jeff speak to it since this has been going on for quite some time, and he's been here during most of it.
We have two state codes, Mississippi Code, the legislature passed authorizing a governmental entity to grant ad valorem tax exemptions in the central business district, and the other code section relates to in a historic district. And I get them confused which is which, but one allows 7 years and the other allows 10 years. And oftentimes we'll grant a 7-year period under one code section and 3 years under another code section so that that applicant can then approach the county supervisors. They're only allowed to give an exemption if the city does, which is an unusual statutory scheme that I've not seen in any other scenario. But anyway, if we grant 7 and then we grant 3, we could give 10 years. The county can only give 7 if they approve it. So the question is, do you want to approve these after the work is done in all cases, or do you want to apply some threshold amount, a dollar amount, where below which you don't want to grant one, because it does require some administrative burden on our assessor collector, and then we have to report to Department of Revenue and file it with I think the Chancery Clerk. So there's been from my perception, just being alive and at the council meetings, a growing concern, since we are trying to do the best we can with the tax money, not to just grant them after the work is done, after all the money's already been spent. And if it was important to get the exemption, you would think you'd ask for it before you do the work. So I think if I remember what the council did last night, we discussed having a new policy that requires people to bring their project to the council in advance of the work beginning to see if they will consent to granting it once the work is finished.
The abatement itself, essentially, if my building's worth $1 million and I put $1 million worth of work in, it would only be taxed as if it were still worth $1 million for the.
Yeah,
for the
that's
period.
right. It doesn't give it a free pass for
So they're
multiple
still
years.
paying taxes, they're just paying taxes on the old value.
That's correct.
Okay.
For whatever period of exemption that they get. And it's discretionary with the council. They could give a 50% exemption for 2 or 3 years. They could give 100% for the full 10. It's just, up to their discretion.
And then last night, I think we voted to give him 8 years on his. So Jeff is right. The council wants to review the policy and to make sure that we communicate it to all folks that are interested in investing in properties in the city, in the historic district and other areas. What the council, I think, is trying to do is to make sure that we're doing this, but that we're doing it in a good way that makes sure that we're being the best stewards we can be of the city's finances.
Man, let's talk a little bit about, the city didn't do anything with the marijuana thing last night, so where do we go from here?
Well, yesterday was the deadline if you were going to opt out, and that was the only thing that, you didn't have to discuss it if you were staying in. So I think we did our due diligence before. I know that I did and the council did, and with Jeff's assistance, we did a lot of research on the policy that was coming down to us from the state government. The city's in. Because we didn't address it last night, then we will opt in. You're in. There have been folks that are interested in bringing businesses here within the industry that have come by City Hall and are reaching out to us. A lot of realtors have reached out that there were several groups that were looking at our area. So, that's where we are.
Any guidelines on where they can sit up at or any areas like?
Well,
that?
there'll be, right now, there will be, they'll have to use the state guidelines where it's 1,000 feet between churches and childcare. The folks that are potentially going to open a grower business here, or any business related to medical marijuana, can reach out to a church or a school or preschool and ask for an exemption of 500 feet. Outside of that, we've not put any other stipulations on it. We haven't added anything to our local ordinances.
I think, the planning commission, maybe according to Kenny, they're gonna have to, go through that process.
Yes, yeah, but at this stage, there's been no changes or additions to it. We're also trying to be proactive and help folks know where the distance between the businesses, the potential businesses, and where they would be.
Kenny and I talked this morning on that, and he's making a lot of progress on locating them all. He had over 40 some odd churches, so.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of church distance restrictions.
And I believe there's already been, from what I've told, that there's been, in the county, there's already been a potential property that someone was looking at and has already reached out to a church in the county for an exemption, the 500 feet, yeah.
Any deadline on when all this gonna start? Since we off any deadline? How soon?
Is there any,
Troy Johnston, Troy Johnston, who's the MML's general counsel, told me that he figured if the city wanted to implement some time, place, and manner zoning restrictions, we probably would have comfort up to about July 1, because the permits are not likely to be issued by the state until that point.
Have you had people call asking about permit?
not me directly, no.
I had a question submitted by a viewer that is probably a legal question, but if you have employees, including police and fire, that have medicinal marijuana prescriptions, are they still allowed to work? Does that affect? Is it treated like a normal prescription drug, or how does that affect people that are employees of the city?
So are they asking if they were to take a drug test
Well, I mean, does it allow them
to work if they've got
if you have medical marijuana permit?
My understanding is that we can still, whether they have a marijuana card or not, they're not gonna be out operating heavy equipment and other machinery while high on marijuana. So they'll have to be coming to work sober, is the answer.
So a medical marijuana permit won't allow them to use it while at work?
Correct.
Okay.
Not here, I hope.
no,
Okay.
no.
Yeah, to go back to the tax abatement thing, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is to sort of incentivize people to invest in the old buildings downtown and to beautify, kind of get rid of some of these hulks that are just sitting out there.
Well, sure. I mean, it's for a lot of different things. You know, there've been some businesses in town that get some of the same type of tax exemptions when they've added new equipment or upgrades to their facilities. You know, the idea is to incentivize people to want to come to Columbus and open businesses and also revitalize areas that need it. But again, as the council was addressing it last night, there are a lot of considerations when they're looking at this. Is it bringing jobs to the area? Is it adding people to the payroll? So that's why I think it's important for folks that are thinking about doing something like this to come to the council in advance with their plans. But the city wants to be as supportive as possible in encouraging people to open businesses here and be a part of the community.
Do you remember who voted against the tax abatement last night? I know it's split 3-3.
Yes, it was Vice Mayor Mickens voted against it, Councilwoman Stewart voted against it, and Councilman Beard. so I broke the tie.
And can you give some recent examples of some stuff downtown that's gotten this abatement? Like, did Chris James Development get it?
Leger owns it, the gentleman from Louisiana, and they came and did a pre-request. Yeah. So they'll have to come back, but they did come and talk to the council about it in advance.
Any others you can think of?
That have gotten it recently?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander, around the corner here, his business across from Coffee House on Fifth. You said Hollyhocks in years past got it.
Yes, Judge Winnup on this Oddfellows building.
The Oddfellows building,
Kathy Coleman.
Kathy Coleman. We could probably go back and retain a list of everybody, but those are some that come to mind.
I'll talk to the chief about the curfew, if that's okay.
Sure. You want to come up and?
Chief, I understand that we have a curfew already in place. So what are we planning to do now with the curfew we already have in place?
Yes. Concerning the curfew that was discussed at the council meeting yesterday, it's a curfew that's been in effect in the city for quite a while. A nighttime curfew and a daytime curfew. Now, of course, the daytime curfew is during the school hours or the school time, school days. So since school will be out in a couple of weeks, the daytime curfew will not be in effect, but yet our nighttime curfew will still be in effect. And what it does, it just allows us to impress upon our parents the responsibilities of all of us as citizens to make sure that we are aware of where our underage minor children are at all times. So let me read you real quickly what the ordinance specifically says with the nighttime curfew, so that there's, it basically says it shall be unlawful for any minor to remain upon any public street, highway, park, sideway, or other public place within the city between the hours of 11 p.m. on any Sunday through Thursday until 5 a.m., and then of the following day from 12:01 a.m. to 5 a.m. on any Friday and Saturday. Now, of course, there's exemptions as far as certain period of times. Of course, if they're with a parent at that time, then there's fine. If they're at a certified school event, and say, for instance, they go out of town and the bus don't get back till certain times, or certain authorized activities.
And then especially if they have a job.
Yes, a job. Also, if there's a job and they get off at a certain period of time. And the statute does require them to have a written note from their job, from their employer, saying that they work for them and they get off at a certain time and they'll be traveling back home.
And we're gonna try to enforce this,
Yes, because of the rise in crime, and we know, and because, like I said, kids will be out here soon, and because there'll be more traffic, young people be out, and like I said, because we want to impress upon our parents. First of all, the ordinance is not designed, and as a police department, we won't be trying to just see how many of our juveniles we can lock up, but we want to impress upon our parents the responsibilities of them knowing where their children are at all times.
Do you have to have a reason to stop the juvenile, or is that enough to just see them?
Just to see them out in a public place within those hours, those curfew hours, is probable cause enough to stop them and question them, as opposed to why they're out there and whether they're with it, and see whether they're with an adult. The first thing we'll do, if we do take one into custody, they'll be taken down to the Juvenile Detention Center, and parents, guardians will be contacted, and they'll be allowed to come and get them. But if there's a second time that they come out, and when we take them the first time, parents are notified of the curfew and let them know that, that if they're called another time, then there could possibly be fines for the parent and community service ranging from $50 the first time all the way up to $500 for subsequent times.
And is this often enforced? I mean, do you see a lot of juveniles out? That question was asked too.
We will be with summertime, yes. Like I said, when school is out and they're kind of roaming a little bit more and having more access to be out, we will see more traffic with our juveniles in these late hours.
So the juvenile detention center will take them 24 hours a day?
Yes.
Okay. That was all I had.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. You know, and let me make a few comments on that too. You know, recently having a 16-year-old that was shot and killed is shocking. It's discouraging. It's upsetting. And we're seeing this kind of thing happen across the country. And there are a lot of different reasons for this. What I will say, on top of what we're trying to do to make sure we're enforcing the curfew, is I'm very appreciative of the many citizens that have reached out and looking for ways to engage our kids in mentoring programs. We had a lady that addressed the council last night that was looking for solutions. And that's what it's going to take to really help work with our youth. Many of these kids are innocent, and they are getting caught up with a wrong element that's influencing them in a way that they shouldn't. You know, we can't arrest ourselves out of this. We've got to take responsibility for the children in our community. The schools can't do it by themselves. It's going to take parents and all of us working together. So I would encourage those who see young people out and are concerned that there may be things going on that could become harmful to somebody, to always reach out to the police department and let them know. But to also, you know, say a prayer for these kids in our community. Again, this is something that we're seeing, you know, every time you turn the TV on, there's another incident somewhere. And there's a lot of reasons that these kinds of things have happened. It's youth, it's mental illness, it's, you know, our police officers, you know, we've got a small crew now, a young crew of police officers who are out working hard to try to do the best they can for our citizens, but it's going to take everybody trying to work together on this. This is a very serious issue that we don't take lightly.
I'll talk to Mr. Kevin Stafford about the park situation, if it's okay.
Yes, sir. We're going to bring Kevin on up and talk about, we did make some decisions with Probst Park last night. It'd be good for him to elaborate on it.
Well, Kevin, I'll start. We had a question submitted. There was a lot of back and forth discussions on a lot of different decisions made on Probst Park. Can you give a brief summary of what was decided last night?
Right, so previous council meeting, the council decided to move forward to finish out the front 5-field wheel, which is fronted off of 182 down in the bottom, as we all know it, where the Field of Dreams is. So this will be adding 4 more fields to complete that wheel. It was decided not to afford right now the parking lot that goes along with that. So the fields itself was estimated at about $2.1 million. That money right now is not sitting anywhere ready to go. We have the 2% tax that's allocated annually, about $400,000 to the city, that's being accumulated at this time, and over the 4-year period, it should accumulate $1.6 million. So what the council approved prior meeting was to move forward with the design and bidding. And as I recommended, is we submit them a proposal in order to take them forward so they kind of know what they're headed towards. So all last night was we came back to them with an actually hourly not to exceed contract to do the full design for the fields and also get a bid number for that. So we anticipate that to be about a 4-month period and to have bids in hand to bring back to the council for consideration to move forward at that time.
Okay, so
And what was the amount on that contract, the not to exceed?
It is $103,800.
okay, so if we project this out, you're saying 4 months from now, which would take you through October, November, and then at that point, would you then begin construction if approved?
Correct.
And so how long would the construction take?
Our intent is about 6 months, start to finish. A lot of that's going to depend on the lighting. Right now, the long lead times on light poles are what we're seeing issues with. 6 months should be plenty of time to finish that project. Even under normal circumstances, we could probably do it under 4 months. So but what that'll do is that will put us into completion about the time baseball starting up next year, about this time next year, in other words.
Okay, so that was a question. So if it all follows the schedule, you'll be ready for next year's baseball?
Correct, that's the intent.
And is Columbus Light Water gonna be doing the lights, or do you know?
We don't know yet, so that's all part of the, Greg and I had a conversation yesterday about that. By far, the most expensive thing involved with this is the lighting. And the light prices have gone through the roof like many things. And so, I referenced with the council, for instance, the Musco lighting that's in the soccer complex. Park and Rec, they love it. You can operate, turn them on and off from your house, from your cell phone. However, a price comes with that. And there are other ways to tackle it. So the Field of Dreams, for instance, to your question, when that project came together, we decided at that time not to afford the expensive lighting and said, we'll upgrade it when we finish out the wheel. Well, Light and Water came in pro bono and put those lights in. Took them down, built the field, came back, put them in at no cost to the city. And so if that comes through this conversation, that could be a route we go to try to get inside of that budget that we have come, that 1.6 million that I referenced. So the hope is, obviously, is that we're going to likely bid, what Greg and I discussed, is bid the lighting as an alternate to where we have options. We don't have to stick with the base bid of whatever the light package is. There's also other vendors out there besides Musco. So a little competition is always good to see if we can get a lighting system that's comparable, but doesn't have to be necessarily top notch.
So how much of that 2.1 million total cost is lighting roundabout?
I didn't bring my estimates with me, but my memory is around 800,000. So it's a significant piece of it.
Or are we gonna resod the old fields? Are we gonna resod the old fields?
So yeah, it'll be reshaping all the old fields, sodding, irrigating, so that they'll be well maintained. Another piece of this is Greg is looking over the next year to look at what it would cost to maintain these fields properly. And so that's something we're going to help him back into, so that once they are completed, they're also maintained properly moving forward. So some of the things you'll see, if you look at the Field of Dreams that we've decided that we like the aesthetic of, is, notice it has that black vinyl coated fence. Those are some things that are minor cost adds, but yet add a great aesthetic and long-term maintenance aspect to the field. So some little things like that we've talked about moving forward that'll come into the discussion beyond just the lighting aspect too.
Are new lights cheaper to operate than old lights?
Yes. The LED version is what we would be looking at, obviously, from an energy use standpoint. There's also ways to finance lighting. So there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, as they say, when it comes to lighting, and that's why that conversation from a financing standpoint is going to be really important. Performance-wise, though, they perform much better. They're energy efficient. So it's just one of those, we need to talk about, what can we afford at this time, and how do we afford it, for that matter.
Okay, and so if, with what you were voted on last night, and if all the steps follow through, then for the next baseball season in 2023, you'd have 5 new fields?
You'd have 5 fields. One is already there, Field of Dreams, and it's being used regularly. So that you have 4 new fields, and to the park, it would be 1 completely new field that doesn't exist. You'll have 4 fields replacing 3. So it would gain 1 more. And so, for instance, last night, Greg was telling me one of the reasons he had to leave the council meeting was he had to go run somebody that was practicing on one of the fields that needed to be used for a makeup rain game. And so now this would provide that 1 more field to be able to be used, again, to increase capacity for the program.
Can new fields drain better and get back in service better than old fields?
Yes, so these estimates include putting in underground drainage as well to make sure, fields can get on as fast as possible. It's not turf. If y'all recall, we talked about how deep in the floodplain that area is, the bottom area. It's 8 to 12 feet under the floodplain. So you don't want to put turf in situations like that. One good flood and the silt from that water will ruin a turf field. However, grass fields are perfectly fine. Soccer complex is a perfect example. It's gone underwater several times. When the floods recede, a day or 2 later, you're back on the plane again. So these will be natural grass fields that are irrigated.
Concession stands and restrooms, all that stuff is included in this thing?
Not in this contract. So that's it's in the master plan to be done. It's the cost is out there, but that's for a future date, not in this contract. Just like the parking's not as well. But if you think about the parking's really already there. It's just in a more natural state of gravel lots, things of that nature, as opposed to a formal parking lot that is shown in the master plan.
And last question was submitted, are these baseball or softball fields or both?
These are going to be baseball, but they could be used for both. So one of the things we had discussed was having to where you could have portable mounds, to where if a certain tournament came along, you could move the softball tournament, for instance, that's played up top, you could use the lower fields as well, with a portable mound if you had the need. So and
which-
vice versa, if you had a baseball tournament, you could go up to the softball fields, and we talked about having those portable mounds there as well. So the
Which are
fields will
big-
be similar in size, they'll be 210 feet fields.
Which are bigger, softball or baseball?
The baseball for the youth in this case, but about 10 feet. It's not a huge difference.
I'm good. Thanks, Lord.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to take this time to comment as the mayor on this process as well. It's still very disappointing to me that the city and the county have two separate park programs, park and rec programs. I'm, like the council, very excited about, improvements at Probst Park. They're past due. But I'm going to also, during this whole process, we got the county looking at, doing baseball fields as well. For a community the size of Lowndes County and Columbus, that seems unnecessary. I've been still continue to reach out to my friends with the Board of Supervisors. I still am hopeful that we can all come together and work together on our parks and recs for what is best for our children. All the things that we want to do at Probst Park are great. I'm all for it. I want to make sure we can pay for it and maintain it. We've got big dreams down there, but that also comes with a big price tag. We want to get started so that people can see that we're doing something down there. There's been concern that there's always been a lot of talk about Probst Park, but no movement. But I will always stand on the side of caution as to making sure we think through each one of these steps and that we have the resources to maintain them. When the Parks and Rec divided the city and county, there was no money set aside to all of a sudden have the adequate funding for a park system within the city. So the park system struggles. We have other neighborhood parks that need upkeep. We have had many citizens reach out to me from the city and the county asking why are we going in these two different directions at the same time. I don't have a good answer for them on it, other than that I believe for what's best for our children in the city and county is to try to work together. Probst Park seems an ideal place to me to be investing in. I think if the city and county are investing in that area, it will also improve the businesses around the park. I hope as we move forward on this that we will, I know we're going to be aggressive in trying to find other funding sources. Kevin had a good list in the last proposal that he sent out. We're already beginning to look for funds in that area. We've talked about getting the private sector investing in the parks as well. But I'm going to continue to speak out in a very positive way, but continuous way of encouraging the city and county to work together on this. We're better together, and I'm always going to encourage the city council and the board of supervisors when we're making these decisions, make sure that we're forward thinking on how this is going to affect our entire community. The more that the city and county work together, the better both are going to be. I'm going to work very hard to make sure that politics doesn't fall into the decision making on this, which is very difficult to do. Again, I think that the city and the county, and the city is part of the county, that we need to all be working together to be the best stewards possible, and to have two competing parks coming out at the same time, for me, doesn't seem that we are being the best stewards. There's a headline for you. Oh, and I want to thank everybody too for being so happy to come up here and speak with Mayor Possum right here. He is actually a puppet he actually works. And this is what we're going to be using to go into the schools. I may start taking him to council meetings, and hissing when, no, I'm kidding. But the idea of Mayor Possum is to engage the kids with the cleanup that we're doing, kind of like we had with the litter bug. Also using him to engage kids if they visit City Hall, to, you know, an interest in what's going on. We're hoping that having a Mayor Possum will begin the early process of talking about getting involved locally, not just with litter stuff, but with working together with your community, which is what makes for a better community. We have Jim here, the new CFO. He did give a budget report last night. I'm surprised that there are no questions about that. Do y'all have any questions for Jim? Y'all are good? Good. Well, Jim, you're doing such a good job. There's not one question. Anything else? You got anything else on there? Thanks, everybody, for being here, and thanks for everybody that tuned in, and have a good rest of your